Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us here physically today and those of you joining us online right now. Welcome to this momentous occasion for the launch of research report developing Hong Kong into Asia's leading clinical innovation hub. This is Patricia Yang, and it's my pleasure to be your MC this afternoon. Let's hear a warm applause to welcome everyone joining us today. Thank you. Today, we gather here for an event that holds immense potential for Hong Kong's biomedical industry and healthcare sector. We're honored to have the strong support and partnership from Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation as strategic partner in this endeavor. Together, we aim to position Hong Kong as Asia's premier clinical innovation hub, driving forward the development of our biomedical ecosystem and healthcare industry. Well, before we dive into the insights of the program today, we would like to invite all of you to scan the QR code displaying on the LED screen right now. By doing so, you'll be able to have instant access to the digital version of the research report, and that you can stay ahead in the world of clinical innovation and embark on a journey of exploration and discovery. In today's event, we're going to hear from distinguished speakers sharing their insights and perspectives on advancing clinical innovation in our region, offering a platform for fruitful exchanges of ideas and forging new collaboration. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to commence our event today, please join me and welcome on stage Dr. Silas Xu Shun Yang, JP, Governor of our Hong Kong Foundation, to deliver a speech. Please welcome Dr. Yang.
Secretary Low, Sunny, Sunny not here, right? Okay, sorry. Albert, Jane, ladies and gentlemen. Now I realize I got the old speech that I was supposed to handle the new one, but let me try to recall my memory to the best I can. On behalf of the Hong Kong Foundation, a very warm welcome to the official launch of the latest policy research report, developing Hong Kong into Asia's leading clinical innovation hub, with the support of the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks. Biotechnology has been recognized as an evolving industry of strategic importance in China's 14th Five-Year Plan. In the Hong Kong Innovation and Technology Development Blueprint released last year, the government has also identified life and health sciences as a key area for development. Clinical innovation is key to Hong Kong's future due to multiple reasons. Firstly, it's the bridge between Hong Kong's academic and research excellence and the commercialization of life-changing drugs and medical therapies. With 2 universities ranked top 50 globally in medicine and top 100 in pharmacy and pharmacology, as well as a world-class medical healthcare services and clinical trial quality, Hong Kong is a promising global hub for clinical innovation. Secondly, it fuels economic growth. By creating an environment that supports efficient drugs development, we attract top-tier biomedical companies to choose Hong Kong as their preferred destination for new drug development and commercialization. Experience from the UK National Institute for Health and Care Clinical Trials, Health and Clinical Care Research has shown a leverage rate up to 760% for every dollar invested in clinical trials. We are very pleased to see recently global pharmaceutical giants AstraZeneca has established its R&D center and iCampus in Hong Kong. Lastly, and most importantly, as the heart of our mission to the pursuit of better treatment options for all, through rigorous clinical trials, we can unlock breakthroughs that make tangible difference in the lives of patients and provide hope to those battling severe illnesses. It is our pleasure to learn that the recent policy speech has taken major steps in the right direction, including a preparatory office for the Hong Kong Center for Medical Products Regulations and the observer status ascension to the International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceutical for Human Use. That being said, more still needs to be done to fully catalyze systemic changes and drive drug commercialization in Hong Kong. The number of clinical trials carried out in Hong Kong, unfortunately, has declined by 22% between 2015 and 2021, despite growing numbers globally. Our joint research report has consulted over 250 stakeholders from academia, commercial sector, to the government in order to find out gaps in the current clinical research ecosystem and propose pragmatic policy recommendations for the government's considerations. Recommendations range from strategies to expand Hong Kong's capacity to take on world-class clinical trials, groom talents critical to the industry's sustainable development, attract top-tier biomedical firms that supplements the ecosystem, and strengthen Hong Kong's role as a medical hub bridging China and the West. I would like to thank Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Institute for translational research team for the very successful partnership between our organization, and hope this will be the first of many to come and further collaboration in the future. Our gratitude also goes to all the dedicated stakeholders for your invaluable contribution to the report. It is our hope that this report will stimulate discussion across the society, contribute to consensus building, and ultimately serve as a reference for the government's policy plans. With our combined efforts, I believe we can expedite the development of life-saving treatments, improve patients' care, and solidify Hong Kong's position as Asia's leading clinical innovation hub and a global leader in biotechnology development. I eagerly anticipate the enlightening discussions that we are about to hear from distinguished panelists. Thank you again. I wish all a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Yang. Please be seated. Today, we're privileged to have a distinguished guest who has graciously provided a video message for this event. Let us now hear from Mr. Bijing Chuan, Executive Vice Chairman of the China Center for International Economic Exchanges and former Secretary General of the leading party members group and Commissioner of the former China Food and Drug Administration. Let's take a look at the video.
各位朋友，我很高兴参加由团结香港基金和香港科技园公司联合举办的打造香港成为亚洲领先的临床创新枢纽研究报告的发布会。在党中央的坚强领导下，2015年开始，我们国家对药品和医疗器械审批制度进行了改革。2017年加入了人用药品技术要求国际协调理事会，逐步实现药品审批在标准程序实现上与国际接轨。药品审批制度改革调动了生物医药创新发展的积极性。近10年来，有几千名科学家回国创业，有上万亿资金进入生物医药市场，支持生物医药的创新。10年来，我国批准上市新药的数量占到全球的15%左右，本土企业新药研发的管线占到全球的33%，数量居全球第2位。生物医药已经成为中国建设创新型国家的重要标志。香港有多所国际知名高校和医疗机构，科研实力较强，是我国生物医药基础研究的重要力量。香港有着高质量的医疗服务、活跃的资本市场、健全的司法和产权制度， 发展生物医药产业和临床研究有很多优势。团结香港基金和香港科学园公司这份研究报告指出了香港发展生物医药和临床研究的关键环节，提出了加强基础研究、培养临床医学科学家、研究辅助人员和复合型人才，推动临床试验数字化，优化临床试验启动流程，简化审批程序，加强临床研究基础建设等建议。这些建议都是很中肯的，对香港发展生物医药和临床研究具有重要的参考价值。报告也提出了香港要进一步发挥国际化优势，加强与大型跨国公司的合作，完善香港药品监督管理制度，善用粤港澳大湾区发展机遇，统筹跨境多中心临床试验，努力把香港打造成国际化的生物医药创新中心。我衷心期待报告能够启发各界讨论，并推动香港成为亚洲领先的临床创新枢纽。最后，预祝发布会取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
Thank you again to Mr. B for the message. Today, we're much honored by the presence of esteemed guests whose guidance and expertise have been pivotal in shaping Hong Kong's biotechnology landscape. Now, please join me and welcome on stage Professor Lo Chung Mao, BBSJP, Secretary for Health of the Government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, to deliver a keynote speech. Please welcome.
Dr. Silas Yang, Dr. Jane Lee, Dr. Albert Wong, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm most delighted today to stand in front of you as the Secretary for Health to give remarks at the launch of this very insightful research report, Developing Hong Kong into Asia's Leading Clinical Innovation Hub, which was jointly conducted by our Hong Kong Foundation and the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation. I would first of all like to extend my warmest congratulations and my warmest welcome to all the attendees here today, and extend my deepest gratitude to our Hong Kong Foundation and the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park for spearheading this pioneering study. Now, the launch of the study today comes at a perfect time as our community and the world are entering into a post-COVID pandemic era. And the Hong Kong SAR government is determined to seize the opportunity to develop Hong Kong as a health and medical innovation hub. I was very glad yesterday that we celebrated the Silver Jubilee anniversary of the University of Hong Kong Clinical Trial Center, with over 2.5 decades experience in high-quality clinical trial. The University of Hong Kong Clinical Trial Center is also conducting an international clinical trial network symposium yesterday. And it all comes at a perfect time when, in this year's policy address, the chief executive announced that we will initiate various policies to develop Hong Kong into a health and medical hub by leveraging Hong Kong's high-quality healthcare system, our state-of-the-art research facilities and capabilities, and the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area national strategy. Now, first of all, we are planning to establish the Greater Bay Area International Clinical Trial Institute in the Hertao Shenzhen Hong Kong Science and Technology Innovation Cooperation Zone to provide a one-stop clinical trial support platform for research institutions and our stakeholders, and to coordinate our resources both in the public and in the private healthcare sectors. The Hertao Cooperation Zone provides the ideal location for a Hong Kong-Shenzhen cross-border collaborative clinical trial platform that will comply with both national and international standards, combining the high-quality international clinical research experience in Hong Kong with the large quantity clinical networks in Shenzhen and in the Greater Bay Area. We have also a very well-built and unique public hospital network with 43 hospitals under the hospital authority and under a single clinical management system computer that will be ideal setting for advancing clinical trials and in big data analysis. But we also acknowledge that there are constraints in the local research talent pool due to the manpower shortage and also the heavy clinical duties of the healthcare staff. As pointed out actually in the report, this is an important issue that we have to address, and that is our talent pool. Research may not always be prioritized in our public healthcare system because of the insufficient recognition or training for our clinical staff. So to unleash the research potential in public hospitals and address the root causes hindering clinicians in doing research, the Hospital Authority will establish the Cluster Clinical Research Support Office. The office will provide advisory and also support services for our clinicians and other frontline staff. Introduce additional measures to encourage medical teams to participate in clinical researches and trials, to expedite the process of ethics review of clinical research, and to strengthen the systems and mechanisms for supporting and incentivizing clinical research and data sharing. With the aim of bringing good medicine to Hong Kong and to the Greater Bay Area, or what we call 好藥港用，甚至係好藥灣區用, and to enhance our biomedicine development ecosystem, we are also taking steps to enhance our regulatory regime towards one of primary evaluation. The government will establish a drug and medical device regulatory authority under the title of the Hong Kong Center for Medical Products Regulation, or CMPR. So it's not a Hong Kong FDA, because we don't look at food. We're only interested in drugs and devices. As a first step, we have launched the 1+ mechanism since November the 1st this year to expedite the approval of new drugs. In contrast to secondary evaluation that requires the approval of 2 reputable regulatory authorities, or 2 CPPs, application for registration of new drugs used for life-threatening or severely debilitating diseases may now rely only on 1 CPP plus the submission of sufficient local clinical data for experts' approval. The new regime will provide a fast track for registration and clinical use of new drugs to benefit needy patients not only in Hong Kong, but also in the Greater Bay Area through the special measure for using Hong Kong registered drugs and medical devices used in Hong Kong public hospitals in GBA, or what you are more familiar with in Chinese, 港澳藥系通. It will also attract pharmaceutical and device industries to develop R&D and have new medical products registration in Hong Kong. In addition, with the support of the National Medical Product Administration, the Hong Kong government has also been accepted as the observer of the International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, or in brief, ICH, with effect from October 31st this year. Our mission is to serve as the center of bringing in and going global, 引進來, 走出去, for the healthcare and medical innovations that will benefit the Great Bay Area and contribute to the building of a healthy China. Our admission as an observer in ICH will pave the way for us to become an internationally recognized regulatory authority for medical products. The policy address initiatives concerted cross-sector collaboration and dialogue. And our Hong Kong Foundation and Hong Kong Science and Technology Park Corporation are definitely our important partners in this subject area. I'd like to take the opportunity to once again thank them for the research report, which shares the same visions that the government does and sheds insightful light on how Hong Kong can leverage on our strengths to elevate our standing as a regional powerhouse that propels health and medical innovation, bringing benefits to Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area as contributing to the building of a healthy China. This research report systematically unveils policy, talent, operational and infrastructural constraints hindering Hong Kong's clinical research ascent through in-depth surveys and expert interviews that involve over 250 stakeholders. Based on the stakeholders' feedback, it recommends action plans across 5 fronts that can help overcome our limitations and transform Hong Kong into a leading regional powerhouse and global influencer in the field of clinical innovation. The recommendations echo the government's initiatives and reinforces our society's confidence in scaling new heights in health and medical innovation. In closing, I'd like to quote from the important speech that President Xi Jinping delivered at the meeting celebrating the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland and the inaugural ceremony of this term government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region on July 1st last year. Quote, "We must faithfully implement the principle of one country, two systems. We must maintain Hong Kong's distinctive status and advantages," end quote. Hong Kong's mission of a health and medical innovation hub with a new policy of primary evaluation for medical products and the establishment of a clinical trial platform in collaboration with Shenzhen and the Greater Bay Area follow President Xi's direction to maintain our distinctive status and advantages in clinical innovation. It will create strong impetus for growth in biomedical innovation and translation as Hong Kong dovetail with the national strategies of 14th Five-Year Plan and the GBA development to develop an international innovation and technology center. It will also address people's expectation to benefit from the most advanced biomedical technology and to further enhance the healthcare standard in Hong Kong. Finally, I'd like to reiterate the government's gratitude for this extensive research report, which will shed light on Hong Kong's health and medical innovation landscape and suggests pathways for seeking breakthrough. It is of extremely high reference value. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Lo. Please remain on stage. Before we proceed with our stage program, we would love to commemorate this moment with several photos. Please join me and welcome on stage, first of all, Dr. Silas Yang, JP. Please welcome. Board of Governor of OHKF. Next, we have Dr. Jane Lee, JP, President of OHKF. Please welcome. Mr. Kenny Shui, Vice President cum Co-Head of Research of OHKF. Please put our hands together and welcome our guests on stage. Next, we have Mr. Victor Kwok, Assistant Research Director of OHKF. Please welcome. Now, our guests on stage will be given the printed copy of this research report and take this photo together. Would our guests please stand closer together for this photo? Please smile for the cameras at the center. Please hold for a few more. This is certainly a moment to remember, a very important milestone for the healthcare sector. Okay, please hold for a few more photos. Okay, thank you very much. Would our guests please remain on stage? Now we would like to invite representatives from our strategic partner, Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation, to join our guests on stage. Please welcome Mr. Albert Wong, CEO of HKSTP. Please welcome. Next we have Dr. H.L. Yu, Chief Corporate Development Officer of HKSTP. Please welcome. We also have Dr. Grace Lau, Head of Institute for Translational Research of HKSTP. Please welcome on stage. Would all of our guests please stand closer together for this photo? Please also, we would like to invite Mrs. Low to join us. All right, let's capture this moment together. Okay, please hold for one more photo for this photographer. We also have some media friends today. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, we would need your participation as well because we're going to take a big group photo with everyone joining us this afternoon. Please have your smiles ready, and our photographers will be coming to the stage to capture this photo for us. All right, big smiles, everyone, and please get ready for the camera. And our guests on the front row, if you don't mind, we would love you to actually move to the center so that we can have everyone in this photo. Thank you so much. All right, our official photographer is here at the center, so please smile for his camera first. Okay, let's have one photo with our thumbs up. Keep smiling, we'll take a few more. We have a lot of guests here today to celebrate this moment with us. That's wonderful. We have one more camera. Please hold. Why don't we say cheers together? 3, 2, 1, cheers! That's wonderful. Okay, I'll make sure our photographers has got the photos. Yes? All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. At this juncture, Professor Low will have other engagements, and thank you very much for joining us today. He may have to depart from the event right now. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him another big round of applause for gracing our event with his presence. Thank you very much. Thank you once again for gracing our event with your presence and your support. Thank you. Now it's time to shift our focus to the research paper, and we're going to learn more about the research findings. Please welcome on stage Mr. Victor Kwok, Assistant Research Director from our Hong Kong Foundation. Please welcome.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to start my presentation today with a quote from Steve Jobs. The biggest innovation of the 21st century will be at the juncture of biology and technology. That really brings us to the topic of biotechnology, a topic in which Hong Kong just has so much to offer in terms of our excellent academics, research capabilities at university, our world-class hospital system, as well as our adherence to international qualities and standards. And indeed, it has become such an important topic that it has become a huge focus in both local and national government blueprints, including the INT blueprint that states life and health technology as one of the key industries, the 14th fifth-year plan that states biotechnology as a strategically emerging industry, as well as a recent policy address that stated our intention to develop Hong Kong as a health and medical innovation hub. Within the biotechnology value chain, or so-called the drug development value chain, we focus on clinical trial today. Not just because it's such an important part in the drug development process, but also because the fact that it brings about multiple benefits. For example, a study in UK showing that for every $1 invested in clinical trials, you can generate up to 7.6 times in economic benefit. and also because of the fact that simply pharmaceutical companies sponsor clinical trials. And therefore, as a result, these clinical trials generate healthcare savings at the public hospital care system as well. And because of all these reasons, we actually expect the clinical trial market to grow at a CAGR of about 6% over the next decade, with Asia expected to outperform. However, on the right chart, you can see that despite mainland China growing, say, threefold over the last 6 years, the number in Hong Kong actually dropped. So the key question today is why? This study is a result of the engagement of over 250 stakeholders, as mentioned multiple times, through expert surveys and as well as stakeholder interviews, including academics, pharmaceutical companies, doctors, etc. Within which we have unveiled several important gaps that we would like to share with you today. Firstly, we have a restrained hospital capacity to take on the clinical trials due to a talent shortage, by means of 3/4 of respondents showing a lack of clinical investigators because of reasons such as they are too busy, in the healthcare services, and they have no time, no administrative support, things like that. Secondly, the study startup time is too long. It's important to recognize that clinical trial is by nature a commercial decision. And if it takes too long, it simply drives companies away. So close to 90% states, they need more than 3 months to get through the regulatory process, especially for phase 1 trials. 2/3 experience delays in subject recruitment, which is also important. Thirdly, we have an incomplete value chain. By means, we still don't have yet a primary review authority, as well as a lack of collaboration with the GBA. For example, having multi-center trials in Hong Kong and the rest of GBA cities, to drive clinical research together. So it's important that we come together to build Hong Kong as Asia's clinical innovation hub, becoming the go-to place for biomedical companies to have their clinical trial development process in Hong Kong, to create new job opportunities in the process, and ultimately to bridge the East and West in terms of the drug access. This is the recommendation framework that we propose today on the government, talent, and business angles. Now, all these are obviously government policies, but however, by the word government, we mean government coordination, overarching oversight on the clinical trial research strategy. We also need a comprehensive talent development strategy. And from the business angle, we need to look at how to develop the regulatory system, optimize clinical operations, as well as other critical infrastructure support. So let's go with the first one. There is roughly 50-something hospitals in Hong Kong, public sector, private sector combined. Now, 2/3, roughly, of the clinical trials are conducted in 2 of the hospitals, Queen Mary and Prince of Wales. This has everything to do with the fact that they have dedicated clinical trial centers providing support administratively, providing personnel, etc. In the recent policy address, we already heard that the government plans to establish a cluster clinical research office that should be operational next year. We view that as a step in the right direction. However, to actually to strategize our clinical research, we feel that under the Health Bureau, we recommend the establishment of a clinical research institute encompassing a few critical components. A clinical research network which bridges investigators from Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area as well. A service center, which is a one-stop shop for the sponsor, the pharmaceutical company coming to Hong Kong, but also provides critical support to non-teaching hospitals and private healthcare institutions in terms of administration, legal, things like that. And lastly, an academy for grooming the talents we need. The service center we mentioned has several key functions, including when a company comes to Hong Kong for clinical trials, to provide that feasibility assessment, identify appropriate study sites, refer patients, as well as things like radiology and resources that the company may actually need. One example that we would like to highlight is Clinical Research Malaysia, which is a very successful example in driving high-level clinical research and trials, which have successfully shortened the contract review time, the legal time frame of the legal contracts between the company and the hospitals, to raise the patient recruitment efficiency, and ultimately to help build the capacity to take on more world-class clinical trials. Our second recommendation today relates to talent development. Everybody knows that HA doctors are incredibly busy, so we all know that. But beyond that, we also feel that there is insufficient research components in the current medical curricula. Doctors suffer from a poor recognition, we already heard that, and compensation for research, which ultimately feeds into a lack of research career path for interested doctors outside of the academia. And lastly, the research support is too weak. So for illustration, currently, if a pharmaceutical company comes to Hong Kong, and well, they need to pay the hospital for the services on clinical trials, the money typically rests with the department account under the HA. If that money is to be redeployed for further clinical trials, it has to undergo a cumbersome process with multiple layers of approval. What we are saying is to create a separate research account for these monies to be deployed for hiring support staff and to fund self-initiated trials. More importantly, as the doctors attain significant research achievements, they should be rewarded by means of factors of promotion, and their overtime efforts should be remunerated. Next is the very important concept of having split time in between clinical research and clinical service. There are a couple innovative models of doing that. For example, clinician scientist positions that are effectively being practiced right now in Singapore and Malaysia, as well as clinical research scholarships that are done by, for example, the D.H. Chan Foundation that basically allows practicing doctors to engage in clinical research. Lastly, I would also like to make one more point that it's not just about investigators. It's also about nurses, coordinators, everybody in the talent ecosystem. So what this shows here is an example of Singapore CRI of how they systematically train research coordinators through a more structured program. So it's important that we utilize, for example, in Hong Kong, the qualifications framework to think about how we ladder the clinical research courses to train the nurses and coordinators and other personnel that we need. Well, another point is on tertiary education and specialist training, all the way from admissions, focusing on more real-life experiences, to undergraduate R&D exposure in both preclinical and clinical stages, to postgraduate research options. One reference is the MIT and Harvard joint program in health sciences and technology, as well as specialist training, having more credit-bearing research exposure. Our third recommendation today relates to the drug regulatory system. We all heard about Hong Kong building our first primary review authority. But the reason why this is so important is we want Hong Kong to become a super connector for drug development, bridging mainland China and the vast market of the global drugs. But to actually achieve that vision, on one hand, we need very close collaboration with the mainland, the NMPA, including, for example, an enhanced medicine link, allowing drugs registered in Hong Kong to be used in GBA and elsewhere. We also need greater harmonization in terms of clinical trial approvals and drug approval as well. Concepts like parallel assessment of drugs in Hong Kong and in mainland concurrently. On the other hand, it's also important that Hong Kong joins multilateral agreements such as the ICH. This achieves a few things. On one hand, mainland China innovation drugs would be able to go global via Hong Kong by an expedited route. And on the other hand, global drugs would be able to enter mainland China via this system. But to actually achieve this vision, we also need closer trial collaboration, multi-center trials, as well as sample flow of both drugs as well as the genetic materials. Here is our proposed timeline for Hong Kong's roadmap to achieve a full primary review system. The Hong Kong government already announced the ascension to ICH observership as well as a 1+ mechanism. It will take time as we build our regulatory expertise and the pipeline to actually achieve a full bridge review involving all drugs, not just selected drugs, and ultimately a full review of all the new drugs in Hong Kong. On the other hand, ICH also requires not just the government, but also the industry comply with ICH standards. So that is another part that is going to take some time. And that is the reason why we're expecting a timeline of up to 8 to 10 years to fully achieve this vision. Now, our fourth recommendation today relates to optimizing clinical operations. This is basically what a clinical trial has to go through before it gets initiated in Hong Kong. It first has to go through ethics committee approvals, depending on which hospital or which cluster that is being conducted. And then there are separate clinical trial certificates to be approved, and there is legal agreements to be negotiated. Now, what we hear from the industry is that it can take up to 6 to 9 months or even a year for a trial to actually be initiated, which effectively drives companies away. So to solve this issue, on one hand, we need to eliminate, to basically streamline the approval process for ethics committees. Well, say, for example, having a trial in Prince of Wales is not really that different from having a trial in Queen Mary. So we don't need 2 layers of approval for that. On the other hand, depending on the risk level of the trial, we are saying, for example, for low-risk trials, maybe we can do it via a notification scheme instead of a separate approval from the PPB. And lastly, for clinical trials agreement, obviously having standardized templates, pricings, things like that is going to help. Another very important thing is the use of data, whether through the HA's patient database or the clinical trial database by the PPB. Just imagine if you are a potential participant in a clinical trial, if you are able to actually access that information online to know that what clinical trials are ongoing, how do I join, that obviously is going to raise the efficiency for patient recruitment. The last thing I want to mention on this is to utilize the public sector fully, which is currently we feel is underutilized. Providing more site management support as well as other patient referral services between the public and the private sector so that private hospitals can be increasingly used as the site for the clinical trial to happen. Our last recommendation today relates to land and infrastructure support. Let's pause and think about one thing. During the COVID years, we all hear from the news about Hong Kong developed vaccines, breakthroughs, things like that. Why aren't we using Hong Kong-made vaccines now? That amounts many reasons. That has everything to do with the fact that Hong Kong does not have a full value chain. For example, central laboratories for sample testing, as well as pilot batch manufacturing facilities for further clinical trial processes and drug development process. So the next question is the why. It's important to note that we all heard about things like tax breaks, or we all heard about things like having land support, assigning land, things like that. I'll just make one more point on this part. Hong Kong prides ourselves as one of the places with the lowest tax globally. However, if we actually compare with regional counterparts, they have been even more aggressive compared to Hong Kong in terms of offering tax incentives and breaks for R&D-related expenditure. So to wrap up the presentation today, I'm going to give you another quote by Theodore Levitt, who is an HBS professor. Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. That really echoes with the topic today. And let this be my call for action to you all, wrapping up the presentation. Don't just listen, go home, and be done with it, but actually let's come together and build Hong Kong as Asia's leading clinical trial center. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor, for sharing the research findings with us. And several recommendations there that we can consider. Thank you so much for your sharing. Well, to foster a deeper understanding and generate meaningful dialogue, we are privileged to have a panel of experts who will share their perspectives towards how to develop Hong Kong into Asia's leading clinical innovation hub. Before inviting them on stage, we would love to encourage all of you to actively participate by asking questions to our panelists later on. At the floor discussion session right after the panel discussion, members in the audience can raise your hands and ask questions in person. For our media friends, you can scan the QR code around you now to submit questions in advance. Please also specify your preferred language for the panelists to answer, such as in English, Cantonese, or Putonghua, and your panelists will respond to you accordingly. Your encouragement and your engagement and participation are greatly appreciated. Now, when our stage is ready, please join me and welcome on stage our moderator for the session, Dr. Stephen Wong, Head of the Chief Executive's Policy Unit of the Government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Please welcome. Joining Dr. Wong on the panel, we have Dr. Dennis Lam, JP, Legislative Council Member and Chairman and CEO of SEMA Eye Care. He'll be joining us later on. Dr. Michael Wong, Director of Quality and Safety at the Hospital Authority. Please welcome. Next, we have Mr. Raj Bhatti, Vice President and General Manager of GSK Hong Kong and Macau. Please welcome. Next, we have Professor Ivan Hong, Chair of Infectious Diseases at the University of Hong Kong. Please welcome. Next, let's invite on stage Dr. Grace Lau, Head of Institute for Translational Research, HKSTP, and Mr. Kenny Shui, Vice President cum Co-Head of Research, our Hong Kong Foundation. Please welcome them on stage. One of our panelists, Dr. Dennis Lam, will be joining us later on. And now over to you, Dr. Wong. Would our panelists please take your seats? Thank you for joining us here on stage. And over to you now, Dr. Wong.
Thank you. It is my honor to be back as the proud OHKF alumni to moderate this session. Again, I wanted to congratulate OHKF for producing a top-notch report, and very proud of that. And undoubtedly, OHKF is definitely the leading think tank in Hong Kong. And also, I heads up the CEPU, the Chief Executive Policy Unit for the government, and I'm basically an internal research unit for the CE, and my job is to learn. So today, moderating is a great way for me to learn, and from a top-notch specialist and experts group here. So without further ado, I will jump right into some of the questions so that we can dive deeper into the topic today. First question to Mr. Raj Bhatti, I call you Raj. And so if you can share with us your thoughts on the recent, again, I'm going to the policy address, but feel free to give us constructive comments. And so your thoughts on this newly introduced 1+ drug approval system, and whether that would actually be helpful to the biotech companies as they do research in Hong Kong.
Okay, I think let me start with the second part of your question, because it actually then leads to the initial part. If I'm a pharma company, what would I be looking for in terms of choosing where to carry out my research, choosing where I could commercialize if I actually find I have positive results? So the first point I would look at is, what is the size of the actual market? So if you look at Hong Kong, it's a fairly sizable market. But if you look at GBA and Hong Kong, you're talking about a market that has the potential which is much larger than most of Europe. It would become a major market. Second question then is, do I have access to that market if I'm successful in my research? Now, I think that's an area where we're beginning to, and I think some of the initial steps that have been taken have guaranteed that. But the key question then is, even if I have access with the right medicine, with the right studies to the GBA, can I commercialize the asset there? So what would my operating model look like? And I think that's where we have to make it easier and more viable for companies to consider that. Yeah. And then, if that's checked off, how quickly would the ethics of my studies be approved? So the benchmark would be markets such as Taiwan, Singapore, Korea, Australia, where you can normally get ethics approval within 2 months. We're currently at 6 to 9, which I think the report actually talked about. So I think that's something, again, that I believe we're now looking to accelerate. And then the question is, how competitive would the centers in this area be compared to the other markets? Because the moment the moment you start drug discovery, you are on a timeline based on patent expiration. And therefore, speed of recruitment, speed of actually conducting the studies becomes a very important factor. And right now, I don't believe that we're lagging considerably behind. I think the question is, some markets are very aggressive. Some trial centers will not just commit to the number of companies asking for patient recruitment. They will go further than that, and they will push themselves. Whereas I think the mentality here can be sometimes we want to play safe, and we want to be sure that we can deliver what we've actually said. So I think there's a little bit here about how bold can we be, how aggressive can we be to guarantee recruitment. And I think if we can do those things, I think we are sitting on an infrastructure with a level of experts that are amazing. And we can absolutely be a global leader. I think we have everything in place. We just need to tweak those steps. And then I think we can fly.
Okay. I'll ask Kenny to comment on some of these. How do we expedite, right, as you suggested in your report later on. But Professor Hong, I think Dr. Low mentioned a lot about talent pool in his speech earlier. I was listening to that. And can you share with us, obviously you as the Assistant Dean Admissions at Hong Kong U, you have a lot of thoughts on how can we recruit talent that has a research-oriented mindset that can actually sort of promote some of these talented clinicians to do a bit more clinical research.
Yes, Stephen. HKU, as led by our Dean, Professor C.S. Lau, we have a very systematic way of recruiting young talents, even in the first and second year of training in the medical training. So what we are looking at is very dedicated clinician scientists who are very keen, perhaps right from the beginning. So we have a newly established what we call the Distinguished Med Scholar track that allow our very young, bright clinician scientists, when they first join the medical school, if they are interested, they will be spending time in the laboratory, as well as, of course, training to be a doctor, which is the major aim of the training. And of course, when they are in their third year, we do have the enrichment year, which allow all our medical students to go overseas to get trained, including, of course, getting a degree in biomedical science, where they will be spending a lot of time in the laboratory and getting a bachelor or a master degree. So some of them will actually go to very prestigious institutes, including Cambridge, Harvard, or London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and many other institutes where they will be trained as a scientist, not just as clinician, as scientists in 1 year, and they will be able to get that degree. And then, of course, at later stage, hopefully with the help of Michael, that when they are in their training to become a specialist, then again at that stage we will be able to attract them to do research. If they're interested, they will be able to do a PhD or an MD degree, and as a result, hopefully we'll also get protected time for them to train as a researcher. We also, under the Distinguished Med Scholar track, we also have a PhD program that guarantee when they graduate, if they're interested, once they finish their internship, they will be getting a 3 years with support from the faculty to be trained to complete a PhD degree in a basic science or a clinical science subjects as their liking, and then coming back to become an academicians at our institute. So as a clinical assistant professor. So I think there are various ways, and at various stages, we're trying to attract these talents to join as a clinician scientist.
Can I just go deeper on that? Some people would argue that, for example, let's say a cohort this year is, let's say, 250 or so in Hong Kong U.
300.
Yeah. 300 now. And what is sort of the percentage of people that will eventually go into science? So is it
for the medical training, of course, we're trying to train clinicians. We're not training clinician scientists as the main aim. But I think out of the 300 students, if we can get 5%, you know, maybe just every year, maybe just 10 or 20 of them who are interested to become a clinician scientist, that will be extremely important. Just a small number of them, but they will be very dedicated clinician scientists, and that's our aim.
Thank you. And to Dr. Michael Wong, I think Dr. Low has mentioned about the cluster clinical research support office that you guys are setting up, and obviously in the research report it talks about some of these different ethical committees, and it's taking time. So how would this cluster clinical research support office be able to help to coordinate and expedite? As Raj had mentioned before, it's all about time is money, is what he's saying. So can we help him?
As Professor Low has just said, the cluster support office is mainly a support and advisory role. So they help the doctors in HA to set up clinical research and conduct the research. So they provide advisory like trial designs, statistical advice, provide administrative support like the IRB applications. But this is not the only role of the cluster support office. One of the major roles of the support office is for coordination among the clusters. So suppose Ivan want to have a study which involves all the patients in HA. He needs to find some co-investigators in other hospitals. It's not practical for all the patients come to Queen Mary to see him. So these clusters support office could help to link up the investigators of various hospitals. And Ivan don't need this service because his network is very strong. He himself could link this up. But someone from the university outside Ivan, maybe from another university, might want to perform research in HA. They need some co-investigators. These research officers could help to link them up. And furthermore, just as the report of OHKF said, now our departments, individual departments, are performing sponsor studies. So they get the sponsors, they hire some research assistants to perform the studies. After the study ends, the research assistants just left, and the research assistant need to find another position. And these research assistants could not cross department. The Department of Surgery research assistant will not work for Department of Medicine. What we want is to pool
Welcome, Dennis. Yeah. You're important, so you need to be in there first. Michael, please continue.
What we want is to pool up this resource so that we could continually hire these research assistants instead of after the research they just leave. And because we continually hire these research assistants, they could have a career path, just like what OHKF has presented. They have some clinical research coordinator in the beginning. They could have a senior one, and after receiving training, they could be the head of a clinical research coordinator. So these research assistants our talents were not just lost, but they will accumulate in HA so that we have more and more experienced research assistants, so that we could easily conduct the clinical research much more efficiently. And last year, about the time take for those institution review board application. Now, as OHKF report has pointed out, now we need to have 3 different applications if you want to perform a clinical research in all hospitals in HA. But we are planning to just merge them. And by next year, you only need to submit 1 application. And we will have performance pledge that we will clear the review within 30 days for the expedite review.
Wow.
And so we will try our best to facilitate it.
Wow. Well, it's rare to have a round of applause so it must be a very good thing. So Dennis, I'm going to let you catch your breath. On this, we were talking about sort of the the clinical trial, the potential primary evaluation. We're talking about GBA and all the topics that you're very familiar with. So we'll let you rest a little bit first, and maybe go to Grace. I saw that you were immediately clapping your hands. Can you share with us your thoughts on clinical trial? Because obviously we talked about HK having this new support office, but we also, last night I was at the Hong Kong UCTC, the Clinical Trial Center. They're doing good work as well. Can you sort of comment on sort of the landscape of how do we facilitate a more multi-center clinical trials?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. I clap because with my 3 decades of doing clinical trials, that would make a huge difference. And I saw my clinical research colleagues in the audience. That will really make a big difference for Hong Kong when we can pick up the speed for getting studies started. Responding to your general questions, I think Professor Hong talked about the need for scientists, clinicians, researchers. It's important. Let's say they are principal investigators. But one investigator probably will need a team of clinical coordinators, research nurses, research assistants, etc. So the need of this kind of manpower is very important. Now, we talked about the shortage of manpower, the talents in clinical research, not just for investigators, but for this important group of people in the industry, in the CR industry. So just want to, that has been reviewed, and we have seen this happening in the last few decades. The population of CR-related research people have really gone down, and well, also related to the drop in clinical trials in Hong Kong. So I think to get back into the scene, we need to address this population as well. So yesterday, maybe you were at the dinner, but not at the conference. So I just want to share yesterday, at the conference yesterday that was mentioned by Professor Low, a clinical research network kind of global meeting, Hong Kong UCTC also revealed that they're setting up together with Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks in our Shenzhen Futian campus, and academy, like an academy for training of clinical research talents. So that would be unveiled in 2024, and I hope that with this drive, we will be building up a strong workforce. And I also encourage pharma companies. I think many years ago, we used to have a big team of clinical research people inside the companies, but as the number of trials gone down, it's all been outsourced, insourced, different kind of models. But I hope that with the surge of clinical trials in Hong Kong, we can build up that population again in Hong Kong to support the growth of clinical trials. So on the other hand, if we can build up the talents in Hong Kong, that's good on one hand. But on the other hand, that will take a little bit of time. And I think the other way to address this problem or this issue is to use technology. Not because I'm from the Science and Technology Park, but the trend for clinical trials is definitely to employ more technology. Now, a better design of trials and using technology to identify the most suitable trials for the most suitable patient. These we can have technology programs to help already. But on the other hand, I think the pandemic era has catalyzed the use of technology, more remote monitoring of patients. Now, we are talking about, in yesterday's conference, use of more digitalized clinical research, not just in managing the clinical data, but also in using what we call decentralized clinical trials. Clinical trials traditionally are all patients going to a center, like in Hong Kong U, to be monitored, to have the visits. But now there's a trend of going forward to decentralized clinical trial with more FDA-approved wearable devices. We can track patients remotely. It's a continuous flow of information or data from patient to the researcher. So if we can work on more in deploying this kind of technology, wearable devices. In fact, in Hong Kong Science Park, we have FDA-approved wearable devices which can track patients very and transmit their vital data to a central database. So I think with better design trials, more deployment of technology in clinical trials design and conduct, remote monitoring, and also we are talking about digital twins, synthetic data, synthetic controls. These are all reducing the number of patients that needs to be transported to a clinical trial center. And I think that would speed up trials as well as reducing the number of manpower needed in conducting trials. And that would definitely make trials more effective and faster to be conducted. So I think that going forward, I hope clinical trials, not just if we can drive the number, that's a good thing, but we also need to think about the future trend, how we can incorporate technology into conduct of clinical trials.
Thank you. Dr. Lam, so in Dr. Lo's previous speech, he talks about, it is definitely your interest, is 好藥灣區用 good drugs be used in GBA, obviously through the existing mechanism of 港澳藥系統啦, where this mechanism where the Hong Kong registered drugs and can be used in the GBA and some of the recognized spots and institutions. So can you sort of share with us your thoughts on sort of how we can capitalize with the opportunity in GBA and what we are developing in the policy address and to see, to get the synergies like Raj has talked about previously, right? We're doing this in Hong Kong, not just for the sake of the Hong Kong market, but because of the GBA market. So if you can share with us your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. I think, firstly, in the policy address, it was written down very clearly that we should moving towards primary assessment and registration, which is extremely important. On the other hand, what's the bigger vision regarding this? Primary registration is only a tool. So I think the vision is, according to the national and the Hong Kong policy, is to assist Hong Kong to become an international hub for innovation and technology for devices and drug developments. So that is our bigger vision. And then primary registration is a tool. So if we work according to that direction, we can do a very simple SWOT analysis. What are our particular strengths? I think we have 2 excellent medical schools, and then our clinical trial standard is very good, well recognized. So this is our major strength. And then we have the weakness. We don't have a primary registration. It's one major weakness. And then how about the opportunities? Now the national policy, the GBA policy, have the strategy. These are something very advantageous to us. And also the Hong Kong government has also established that innovation and technologies is our future. So we have the fundamental support. In threat, the geopolitical rivalry between China and the US and the West, and also competition from GBA. I think we can turn it around. If we can work together, then this will be very synergistic. On the other hand, other cities in the GBA, they also want to take a lead in this innovation and technology for drug development. And also Hainan province. So I think we have to, this is a very simple SWOT analysis. And then our mission is to develop Hong Kong into sort of a super connector. We are a bridge. We are able to attract high-level advanced drug and devices from these big farmers, attract them to come to Hong Kong. But Hong Kong market is so small, nobody is interested. You must be able to get into China, then people will be interested. On the other hand, if we are very good, we can help PRC products and company through Hong Kong to the international arena. Then our role will be very salient. So how to do that? You mentioned about the medicine link. I think this is very important. Why? Because at the moment, this is a very special policy for the GBA development. For those drugs that have not been registered in China but being used in Hong Kong, you can apply for exemption so that these drugs and devices can be used in GBA designated medical institutes. So it's under good control. But actually, this is not just a small gateway. Why? Because patients from all over China, they can come over to receive the treatment. And compared to that of Hainan, I think in Canton province, it's much more convenient. And also, the medical standard, the capacity and ability is much bigger. However, the drugs so far, the list of drugs and devices which have been sort of get the approval to be used is very limited. One of the reasons is that when we compare with the Hainan policy, the devices and drugs has to be registered and used in Hong Kong before you can apply for this exemption. But for Hainan province, as long as it's registered in the US, in EU, in the UK, or in Japan, you can make the application. So it's much, much wider. Yeah, because Hong Kong market is so small, so drug company may not be interested. Even if you are interested, it takes at least a year before you can get the registration done. So I think this is one area that the Hong Kong government may want to take reference of the Hainan policy. If the current medicine link policy can be at par, it will help a lot. And secondly, which is I think most important, the drugs that have been used in Hong Kong have the sort of qualification to apply the exemption to be used in the GBA area. If we have primary approval, then the drugs approved by the Hong Kong authority will certainly be listed for this application. So if I'm an international company, once the drugs is registered in Hong Kong, you have primary registration, then I'm very interested to get my drugs further developed in Hong Kong. Because once it's approved by the Hong Kong authority, you have a chance to get into the China market. Then the whole scenario would be very much different. Yeah.
Does it sound attractive to you, Raj?
Very. I don't think I could have said it better myself. Thank you.
I would say, so the short term is to expand the list of the drugs and devices under the medicine link, right? That's sort of the immediate step. And the longer term is obviously with the primary evaluation set up in Hong Kong, you know, we would be able to take advantage of that even better. Thanks, Dennis. Kenny, we're back to the issue of talent, because Dr. Ivan Hong mentioned, you know, 5 to 10% of the cohort can be the scientists, and I think in the report you also sort of talks about the need of having these clinician scientists. You know, can you elaborate more on that, and what else can be done in that aspect? Is it chicken and egg problems? You know, because not a lot of opportunities so far, therefore not a lot of people wanting to be that clinical scientists, or you know, how do we break that chicken and egg problem?
Thanks, Stephen. Indeed, the talent issue is always the key points to establishing our leading clinical innovation hub, and it's also the major challenges most of the economies are facing right now. So here I would like to provide or introduce 4 ways that can provide more incentive, especially for the HA doctors, to working on the clinical research, and also Stephen just mentioned the clinician scientist role. So first of all, I think it is important to give the recognitions for the doctors in conducting the clinical research. Currently, the HA doctors, they can receive the OT compensation for their clinical service to the patient, but not for their work in conducting the clinical research. So we should consider providing the OT compensations for their research work, and give recognitions for their contribution through promotion or the salary adjustment. This doesn't mean that conducting clinical research is a must item for doctor promotion, but we should provide an alternative career path for the doctors who are interested in the clinical research, which also comes to my second point, just Stephen mentioned. We should provide a clear career path for those people For example, looking at the example of the UK and Singapore, we can create a clinician scientist role in the HA hospital. And looking to the US example, we can create the pharmaceutical pharmacist scientists for pharmacists that engage in the clinical trial investigators. All these positions can enhance the clinical research environment and the recognitions in HA. First, I think providing the early career and also professional trainings to doctors is very important. For example, the current healthcare and medical research fund, they has a research fellowship program to provide support for the doctor in the overseas training and even conduct some small-scale research project. But it is only limited to the juniors, academics, and also the healthcare professional in the 2 public teaching hospitals. So I think we should open up all the quotas to all HA doctors and even expand the research funding to cover the hiring costs of the staff of these various institutions. And last but not least, I think we should provide more training for the research support staff. For example, if we look at to the Singapore and Malaysia, we can develop a clinical trial institute academy, which provide the structural trainings for the research support staff like the clinical research coordinators so that they can help the doctor to solve some administration work. We should teach them how to do the project management and also ensure the compliance with the protocols and also the regulations in clinical trials. So all these measures can enhance the talent ecosystem in the clinical research and provide more incentive for doctors to conduct in these areas.
You know, it's easy to be a moderator because I can just ask your question to Michael when you mentioned HA. So what do you think about this idea of setting up, hiring more clinical scientists, right? Because obviously, one thought is obviously it's already shortage of doctors and therefore everyone is busy. It's hard to just get people to do the clinical scientist work. But on the other hand, I saw that, right, you know, with this new mechanism of, the special registration or the existing limited registration, we don't have a lot of, it's still a limited number of people in HA that is hired through, from a non-local perspective that can add to our, expert pool. Can we actually explore sort of the, non-local routes for the clinical scientists in HA, particularly to solve the problem that we have if we have shortage of doctors in HA already?
Let's answer the easy part of the question first. The easy part is that we will consider clinical research as part of the promotion prospect or also the performance review. So that now the doctors will have a bit of advantage if he has a substantial output in the clinical research over the performance review or a promotion board. This is already implemented. But the difficult part here is the clinician scientists. Now, as you have said, we are still down in doctors. We still have a lot of vacancies. And although the overseas doctors scheme, the special registration, limited registration has helped us in some way and fill up some of our gaps, but this gap is still there. But we are rather optimistic over long term. Over maybe in 5 or 6 years' time, Ivan just says we have 300 intakes each year in each medical school. The production numbers increased. Overseas doctors coming to Hong Kong will probably increase because we have wider recruitment all over the world. We have been recruiting in Australia, UK, Malaysia, everywhere. So in a longer run, we are more optimistic, and we could consider in the medium term that we will start up some of those clinician scientist posts. Actually, in HA, we have some similar posts there. We have some collaboration with universities that we allow some of our doctors to be a research fellow for a year. But there's very limited quota. I think it's 2 doctors a year. So it's very limited. But in the future, we could consider expanding these types of collaborations so that this paved the way for a longer-term clinician doctor post or half clinical work, half research post. So, but the main focus of HA still is the clinical work. So probably the majority of workforce in HA is still taking care of patients.
Of course.
But clinical research will be a major component in the medium term.
So, okay, yes, Dr. Lam. Yeah, but before you, actually, I was going to say that feel free to get ready. You can you open the floor. We're going to open the floor up to take questions from any of you. So please do feel free to ask questions. And I'm going to get an iPad, right? I haven't got an iPad yet. These are for the media questions. So just get ready. But yes, Dr. Lam.
In terms of translational research, for those who have the physician-scientist background, it will be extremely advantageous. Why? Because you have the clinical training, and then you have the scientific, the bench or the laboratory component. So it's much easier for you not to do the clinical trials. Clinical trials is only a late stage. The conception or the formation of the idea, and then be clinical. Finally, we be clinical phase 1, 2, 3. So I think Hong Kong is quite a lot of talents in clinician or physician scientists. Is it important? Very important. Because these are the people who can much easily or readily to generate idea and then get the things started. So we talk about lacking of clinical people. Yes, we must address that issue. On the other hand, if for those who have the background, they may come to Hong Kong for development, not really for clinical service. But they have two major components inside their brain, so the chance of success is much easier. So I do hope that the government can look into this area, how we can get more physician scientists to Hong Kong. De novo, we have local training and production, but it takes a very long time.
Can your company hire them?
So, yes, of course. Yeah, no, from outside. From outside is one very important source.
Thank you, Stephen. Just to make a comment about for a while now, the trend, and also yesterday at the Clinical Research Network meeting, there's an actual trend of doing more real-world evidence trial now, and also the trend of integrating clinical trial design with clinical practice. So this is, many drug authorities are already issuing guidelines on how to evaluate real-world evidence. So I think in this sense, this is already taking a trend in that direction. So I think when we design clinical trial, take that into account, marrying clinical practice with a clinical trial type of design to evaluate a certain hypothesis, that would definitely help and also reduce the separate, the manpower needed separately for a clinical trial as well as your clinical practice. Because the patients being seen every day at the hospital, maybe they're already being recruited into contributing to a clinical hypothesis.
Let me just get.
Yes, I very much agree with what Dennis said, but probably Dennis have just missed my bit because. Yeah. So when I was saying about the where we're training very young medical students as as clinician scientists, we're saying at basically when they graduate they will be leading the investigator-initiated clinical trials. That means that they will actually be translating what they actually found in the laboratory into a product, maybe a drug, maybe a vaccine, into a clinical trials. So these are the very rare clinician scientists that actually are able to bring research from the basic science and translating them into clinical use. So I think this is the most important part, is the investigator-initiated trials. Not just pharmaceutical driven, but actually scientists, our homegrown scientists, able to lead a project or able to, innovate and actually produce a drug, a new drug or vaccine that subsequently translated into a commercial use.
I guess what all of us will probably agree, or you probably agree, that so we have some competitive advantage in the obviously the basic research and science, and we have obviously very good clinicians, and so it's just not enough of those hybrids that actually do both, right? The clinical, the clinical scientists, whether we can actually, they are both the, have expertise in clinics, clinical, but also they have time and also expertise to do the basic research, to do the...
You will need those hybrid because they are the one who actually able to master both.
Right.
As a clinician and also as a scientist.
I think most of the people, they just want to do clinical. That's fine.
Yeah.
And if you're able to do clinical well, that's already excellent. But it's really the rare and small minority that can do both. And then we have to create an atmosphere to groom them.
But
that's why I say 5%.
Yeah. Dennis, I was actually serious when I asked, like, because the government HA can do a bit of hiring those scientists, but a company like yours is is very sizable companies. Would you consider sort of hiring a bit more of these clinical scientists to create jobs?
More than happy to do so.
Right.
Yeah. As long as you have a project, you have development, you need talents. So these are the people all company needs. We have to fight for these people to join our company, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. One point that I want to echo regarding the real-world data, this is extremely important, and we are a little bit lacking behind, because for a regulatory body, whether a drug is approved or not, we have the clinical as well as the CMC. The CMC is related to the drugs. For the clinical, the ethnic differences is a major concern. For example, this drug is approved in the US. Only a few Chinese were in the study sample, or even no Chinese. How can the Chinese authority approve the drug for usage in China? But if the drug is approved in the US and now you have real-world data in Hong Kong collected in a very systematic and structured manner, this data will be extremely useful for direct registration or for facilitation of a sort of a smaller scale phase 3 studies. And in Hainan province, they have established the real-world data institute to support, support trials. And actually, they have successful example. Just use the real-world data and get it registered in China. So I suggest, I hope the Hong Kong government can try to work out a real-world data center or institute or whatever you call it, based in Hong Kong but cater for Greater Bay Area. Because if you are not doing that, other cities may want to do it.
Raj?
Yeah, I think we know where we want to get to, but here and now, I actually think Hong Kong has a major advantage globally on the ability to generate real-world evidence, because we're one of the few places, when you look at a population of, say, 7.6 million, where you've actually got connected patient records between hospitals and the private clinics. Our ability to actually follow and monitor patients is huge. It's much bigger than most of the research sites globally. So I think this is an area that we could capitalize on and we could accelerate because we have the connected healthcare to do so. So for me, we shouldn't be cautious about that. I think we could take first mover advantage in this space and actually be a global leader within the next 3 years if we put in the right infrastructure to drive it.
Yes, Dr. Raj, I very much agree with you. In fact, at HKU, I think Professor Ian Wong's team and also our School of Public Health already is a leader in terms of real-world data analysis, working closely with hospital authority on that. As said, we have a 7.5 million population. Most of the populations under the record of the very well-organized computerized medical system under the HA. And that's why we could retrieve all these data very effectively, as Professor Ian Wong has done.
I mean, just the last point I'd make on that is that everywhere there is aging population. Hong Kong, I think around 25% of our population is 65 and over. And healthy aging, not just for quality of life, but reducing burden on healthcare that the government would have to burden. We have the perfect population and setup to carry out studies to actually evaluate, vaccines, a lot of the products that would benefit healthy aging. And so I think we have so much opportunity here.
Thanks for drinking our Kool-Aid together. I mean, yes, the aging study is definitely something that we can do in Hong Kong. Kenny.
Okay, so I just want to add 2 more points. First of all, I totally agree that the real-world data is very important. And I think the easier ways to do is through our medical link already in the GBAs. So we have the example and we have the data. So one of the easier ways is to use these data. And the second point is I want to echo Professor Holmes on the clinical scientists and also the universities' roles. So actually we can take reference to the Harvard and also the MIT. In Hong Kong, we can consider to create new graduate entry rules to the MD program. For example, like the program in Hong Kong, you like the biomedical science or biomedical engineering. Actually, we can have a double degree to the connect with the MD program so that we can train the student who is good and the research oriented to link up their research skill to the clinical practice so that we can train these people and they can become our clinician scientists in future.
Time to open up to the floor. I saw a lot of distinguished experts and panel, experts and specialists on the floor, so love to get your thoughts and commentary, questions. Yes, there. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Hi, this is Edmund Sim from High Tide Therapeutics. I want to agree with Dr. Lam about the GBA areas in Hong Kong. One of the questions that we're facing is, we're doing the NASH programs in US, and then we start the clinical trials in Hong Kong as well. That's very smooth, and we start enrollment. But at the same time, we're doing a type 2 diabetes in China. But we find it's quite hard to land the clinical trial in Hong Kong. The reason why, because they treat Hong Kong as a new MRCT center, which means you need certain costs, and also they need to approve the ethics group. Why have to do it in Hong Kong? So is there any route? I mean, you can have a reciprocal system to the China NMPA system?
Yes.
I think from what I gather, central government is actually pleased to have participation of Hong Kong, because from the national policies, it's clear that the central as well as our own government want to develop Hong Kong as an innovation hub. And therefore, in terms of big policies, the central government wants to support. And regarding this clinical trial site, actually more than 15 years ago, there was one exercise in which Hong Kong U and CU and also the Hong Kong Eye Hospital, they have a team and then to have the assessment. So quite a number of us clinical drug trial centers, the data are accepted by NMPA. And also through the MPC, I propose that, in America, they do not need these recognized clinical drug trial centers. You just do the study according to the protocol. And then after the study is finished, if they send somebody to vet your data, if it's good, then it's all right. If not, then you suffer from your own weaknesses. So the central government has already adopted this policy. You do not need to be a recognized clinical drug trial center. If you want to be part of the multi-center trial site, you just apply, and then that will be accepted in general. So I don't see why there was such a barrier. So maybe it's from policy to the actual functioning, there is a gap. But certainly, if the big policy is to support Hong Kong's development in this area, I think we can certainly communicate. And then talk to the center people and get this resolved.
Yeah, I'd love to get your specific case and we'll follow up on that. Yeah, okay. Any questions? Yes, okay. Okay, yes, okay, yes.
Gentlemen, this is a great talk today. I'm Wayne from the Hong Kong UST. We are talking about clinician scientists, try to bring more scientists to Hong Kong. But will you also consider more biostatisticians? At the end of the day of the clinical trial, you need a good CSR. But I think biostatisticians is really shortage. So maybe we should also consider this field. Thank you.
Thank you. New topic. Professor Hong?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that we need more biostatisticians. And I think right now at HKU, the School of Public Health is doing a great job on that. We do have a Master of Public Health program that do train a lot of our clinicians to also engage in the role of biostatistician. Of course, they also have a program to train biostatisticians as well. So hopefully we'll get both homegrown biostatisticians as well as overseas.
Okay, so that gentleman in front and then back and that Professor Wong and then that, yep. So.
Thank you to all the panelists. I'm Colin from Greater Bay Biotechnology, and especially thank you for Dennis and Kenny as well. And my question, it's more related for you two gentlemen. Dennis, you mentioned about CMC. I echo what Wayne has just said, apart from biostatisticians. We have tried to hire pharmaceutical engineer. So there's the clinical researchers or scientists at the beginning and also carrying out clinical trial at the end. But in the middle part, the CMC part, currently in Hong Kong, none of the university actually provide a course in pharmaceutical engineering. And as a Hong Kong biotech, I wanted to support Hong Kong in clinical trial, but we are having difficulty to try and recruit such talent. I have to go to the nearest places in Guangdong Pharmaceutical University to hire such talent. So I'm not sure if Kenny, your study, have looked at a pharmaceutical engineer. That's my first question. Second question is, at the before clinical trial, at the biomedical stage, preclinical stage, I've tried to get pharmaceutical ingredients into Hong Kong to carry out early stage research animal studies. But what we found is very difficult. I've got pharmaceutical ingredients approved by NMPA in China, but we're unable to get that across the border into Hong Kong in order for us to carry out early stage research. So would welcome your comments or thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay. You mentioned you, Kenny.
So, definitely, I think actually all these position is really important, especially when we study the clinical research institute in other places, for example, like Singapore or Malaysia. We found that in the institute, they have this kind of position and expertise so that we can conduct the clinical research support to the other universities, to the other hospitals. But in Hong Kong, I think most of the case, because our medical school focus too much on the academic result, and unlike some other university, they also look for the medical related work experience or research experience. Another way I think is we can try to add more elective courses, because currently the courses seems to be focused too much on the clinical surface. Maybe we can depend on people's interest to try to add more different like pharmaceutical engineering, sometimes like that. And maybe another way is to doing this is try to have more, as I mentioned, more the double degree, try to combine different degree together so that there is some student maybe interested in both areas, they can be this position in future.
Professor Hong, any thoughts on pharmaceutical engineering?
Well, I have to ask my dean whether we could set up such a program. With regards to getting the investigative product into Hong Kong, I agree with you, that's very difficult. And that's not just the investigative product, I think the other thing is the getting specimens, like blood or specimen, human specimen from the mainland into Hong Kong is for basically you cannot do that. So by setting up with the clinical trial center, I think it's one way of solving this problem. If we could have a Greater Bay Area, including Hong Kong, that we could share the specimens with very good security. And I think that's one way of overcoming this problem. The other one, of course, is to, as you mentioned about preclinical, if we could have our own production line, a factory that able to manufacture drugs and even vaccine of a small quantity, sufficient enough for preclinical study as well as for maybe phase 1 and phase 2 trial. Again, that will be very important.
Dr. Lam, as the MPC member, you're the best person to address how can we get the specimen.
I think we have to work both ways. One is from the Hong Kong government, the other is from central government. I appreciate your questions. I do agree that we are lacking of expertise in biostatistics as well as in CMC. Especially if you're talking about, say, biostatistics, you're not talking about a trial for international publications. You're talking about for regulatory approval. They are very tricky. So I don't think that we have enough expertise in Hong Kong at the moment. And for CMC, it's almost empty now. So I think in the interim, you may want to really sit experts, overseas experts as consultants, so that they will be able to help you, for the new drug approval application, so on and so forth, or the design of your protocols.
Okay, gentleman in the back.
Yes, thank you. I'm Professor W.K. Sito from Hong Kong U. So having gone through my fair share of clinical trials in Hong Kong, I feel that many of the global and China sponsors and CROs and stakeholders are actually quite aware of the limitations of Hong Kong. And they're still coming to Hong Kong is mainly due to the professional excellence of the researchers in Hong Kong. So if a vaccine trial comes to Hong Kong, it is because of Professor Ivan Hong. Yes. So I think that if we actually overcome these limitations that we have mentioned today, we still need some kind of strategy in which how do we engage these stakeholders, both global stakeholders and also stakeholders in mainland China. So I'm not sure if anyone has any opinion on this strategy.
Okay, Raj.
I think it's one thing we do need to consider is that we've referred to the opportunity with GBA. But right now, the policy within GBA is very good in terms of if it's an innovative medicine or device, which there is no equivalent within the mainland and it fulfills a serious unmet medical need, that obviously can be listed within the area. However, vaccines are not included currently within that policy. And for some understandable reasons, vaccinations are at mass. So when you think about safety, pharmacovigilance, you look at budget. There are things that have to be considered, but I think we need to work with governments to find solutions to this, because if you think about a lot of where the research is going, a lot of it is about disease prevention as opposed to ongoing treatment. So one part of, to your point, I think is if we can find a viable way to have vaccine access for preventable diseases that fulfills the criteria for GBA, I think that would attract a lot more R&D within the area, because at the moment, that's quite a limiting factor.
Professor Ivan Hong, you're the man.
Yes, first of all, I'm not the person. I think it's Henry Yao's team, the Clinical Trial Center, which is doing the best job. But I think, as said, I think we could escalate that into the Greater Bay Area. If we could have as a Clinical Trial Center institute that will cover both Hong Kong and Greater Bay Area, and we could attract definitely much more, investment or potential clinical trial, including both drugs and vaccine, into Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area, with the recognition, of course, of the standard from the both clinical trial center from HKU and CUHK, because then they could get their product license once they prove, gone through the phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial in Hong Kong, or even phase 3, or multi-center trial, then they could get their product license globally, or with investment from the mainland.
Gentleman on the right, yes, you have your hand raised. Yeah, before, yes, also he has his hand raised first. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Wen Xing. I'm from Vivid Vision Biotech, Hong Kong. Our company is actually headquartered in Shanghai, so we have an office over here. We think that, just looking at the field, right? the clinical research in Hong Kong definitely is top grade. It's very excellent. And a lot of great papers like about clinical research published from Hong Kong. But many of them are actually mostly investigator-initiated research. A lot of like a population-based research. We actually, being a biotech company, we were asked to have to include Hong Kong as one of the places we can run clinical trials. Like, let's say we want to approve a concept trial, phase 2. Now we need probably say 7 or 8 centers. If we need run a phase 3 trial, we want to have say 20, 30, even 50 centers for trial. So I mean, if we can have Hong Kong as one of the places to do the clinical trial, and also when with the trial done, if it's positive, and we can get the drug approved in Hong Kong right away, as long as also with sometimes in China or other places. That's one we love to see. And another place we want to see, frankly speaking, because in China we call it 内转. So a lot of companies are competing for, similar drugs, or just for, let's say for a small few, too many drugs, then the price is so suppressed. So the company doesn't make that much money. So a lot of companies are looking out. So try to run a regional international trial, say like run a trial in, say, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thai, Vietnam, all these places. Let's group them together to run the trial to get the drug approved in those places, also including Malay or Indonesia. So we're looking at all these things. If we can do a trial involving clinical centers in all these regions and get the drugs approved, that'd be excellent. That'd be a great advantage for the company and also for the region. So those are the things we're looking at. So again, along the several people asked a question previously. So we actually find out, yes, it's a little bit difficult to run the trial as part of a POC or for the registration trial in Hong Kong, just because the barrier between Hong Kong and also other regions. I don't know if there are plans, let's say, to integrate some system with the mainland China or with, say, Southeast Asia countries. Just have a group together to say, one place approved, we can get all the places approved.
Any thoughts? So Dr. Lam, you mentioned before, obviously Hong Kong wanted to be that hub of coming out, right? So that we are the hub of mainland pharmaceutical companies that going out to the ASEAN, to the national network. So it's pretty specific questions that he has on, in the going out process. Can Hong Kong serve that, POC clinical trial hub?
Whenever we are in doubt, we go back to the fundamental, to the ABC. So for developing new drugs, we have to have the idea, and then you may get a patent to protect yourself, so that the development will become meaningful. And then you have to have the preclinical stuff, and then you have to the phase 1, 2, 3. So the whole process is quite long, and then we are very strong in clinical trials. That is a phase 2 or 3. Even phase 1 is very difficult in Hong Kong. So I think if we really want to, have good success, maybe 3-5 years down the road, we should take references. I'll give you one example. Our company wants to do a phase 1 trial. We just look around. So it be done in Hong Kong, in the US, in the UK, in Europe, or in Australia. So we make a comparison and then find the policy in Australia for phase 1 study is very good compared to the others. So if Hong Kong wants to become a key player, you have to set the policy, you have to get the facilitation. So I think we do have a lot of homework to do, and then from A to Z. And then in each of the area, if we are already good, we want to do it better. Especially we have the support from the central government as well as the GBA policy. And then the Hong Kong's track record, the one country, two system, so on and so forth. So many good factors. On the other hand, you have to get it done. And you have to know what exactly are needed. So physician scientists, conception of ideas, all these are very important. You can have KPI. So how many patents are Hong Kong getting per year? And then how many investigatory new drugs, IND? So you look at the number, you don't feel good. How many IND in Hong Kong that we have already got? So that means there are really areas that we have to make a big push before the final goal of becoming an international hub for these biomedical devices and drugs development. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Professor. Yeah.
Professor in Pharmacy, Hong Kong U. So I think some of the things that's about capacity building is highly important. And I think 2 points that need to actually point out. Some of the experience that I have when the UK set up the clinical research network at that particular point, they strategically actually funded clinicians, pharmacists, nurses to take on fellowship. And those fellowship will later on building a career for those champions. We need a champion in medic, we need champion in pharmacy, we need champion in nurses, we need champion in biochemistry. Those champions should have a career pathway. And that was one of the reasons why in the past it was failed so miserably, because you don't give them a pathway. So you give them a job as in CRO, and then they do the RA work, and then 2 years later, thank you very much, go for another job. It doesn't work like that. So that is something that I think, whether it's the health bureau or the education department need to consider. And secondly, it's about, somebody talk about the CMC side of it. That is certainly in the pharmacy domain. One of the challenge is in university, when you set up courses, you do need to have UGC funding. That is fundamental. I know in here, we have the ITC here. We certainly have the Health Bureau. We do need to think about the education. It's beyond just in the Health Bureau. If you want a chemist, if you want a pharmacist, if you want those people able to actually to support the toxicology side of it, it's not actually in medicine. It's in chemistry, biology, and pharmacy. So it means that the UGC need to have a strategic approach to say that they need to set up courses. It doesn't have to be in undergrad, but at least it needs to be in the postgraduate program. Now, WHO went to University of Bradford about 20 years ago and told them that a lot of developing countries, they don't have enough regulatory affair expertise. So the WHO gave them the money, say, set up master program. Students from those countries don't need to pay. Of course, the Hong Kong government can do exactly the same. Give the university the funding to set up courses. And people, they require the chemical engineer, people require the pharmaceutical engineering, people require the toxicology, can go to university to do the course. Without those, we will always have this particular problem of the capacity. So this is my suggestion for the panel to think about it. And the second thing I want to also point out is about the real-world evidence. Raj, you're absolutely right. Because the gentleman sits next to me from the Department of Health and also with the hospital authority, we broke the record. We actually linked the data from the hospital authority with the DH. We managed to monitor all 7 million people's health in the vaccine, which is led by our department. And that kind of system should continue to support the clinical research. And that's, again, I think that in the future, for the Clinical Research Institute, need to make that strategic approach to ensure, build on the success that we already have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have time for one more questions and commentary. And yes, lady in the middle.
Hi, everyone. I'm new to Hong Kong. I joined the University of Hong Kong as director of the Centre of Cancer Medicine only earlier this year, a few months ago. And I come from Sydney, and I totally agree in Australia that we do have really big recruitments to many clinical trials, and a lot of sponsors do come to Australia for clinical trials. But one thing, apart from I'm here to learn, what's happening in Hong Kong, and particularly, and since I actually joined University of Hong Kong, I have already started to build the cancer clinical trials unit, and that's exactly what we heard about for the study coordinators, having study coordinators, research nurses, and providing internship for students, and a lot of students already coming in and asking us to actually give them the chance to actually see how clinical trials would work, and also providing the different talents from different schools and departments with their students to, for instance, from Department of Pharmacy Pharmacology, from the School of Biomedical Scientists, to come in and learn about clinical trials. But one thing, apart from all that we heard, is great that things actually had improved or will be improved very quickly. One thing I noticed is that the population in Hong Kong is so much more than what we normally see, for instance, in Sydney. But we just within our centre alone in Sydney, that we recruited many more patients than what we've seen in most of the trials actually in Hong Kong. I think one of the reasons is not just joining the trial at a later time point because of a delay in approval of the IRB or any other processing problem. I think we have to increase the patient's awareness of how safe clinical trials are and how good it is to be part of a clinical trial, to access new drugs, new standard of care, and some good science behind it, that patients would actually be aware of it. So I've now come to Hong Kong, and one dream that I have is one day before I retire, if a patient diagnosed to have cancer would ask one question: is there a clinical trial suitable for me?
Oh, wow.
And so that would be what I'm hoping to improve. And one thing that I'm hoping to also build is an app that would hopefully be able to have cross-referral of patients from different hospitals, easy enough to find out exactly what trials are being conducted in which hospital. And we should really work all together. We don't really have the trial to be run in all the different hospitals. It's just a waste of resources, but we should really have complementary trials. And yet we should really have the different doctors having the awareness as well as the patients trying to look for the right trial for them.
Thank you. Okay, time is really up, but any sort of last words from our panelists? Okay, Dr. Lam, you always have the last word.
Well, I echo what you have just said. I think one thing is about the mindset. For many of the Chinese patients, they think, trials, I don't want to be the guinea pig. But I think in the Western culture, they consider this is reasonably safe. Safety is most important. And on the other hand, it's a contributions to advancement of medicine. So I think education, publicity, a change of mindset will be very helpful. And lastly, I want to say that we must make critical analysis of what we are having. We want to leverage on our strengths. And then we want to fill the gap on the weak part. And I think our future is bright and promising. So I do hope that you can all work together to bring this, to bring Hong Kong to become a real international hub.
If I can say, this is a very successful launch of this report. Congratulations again to OHKF and Science Park. And this is also a beginning of a wonderful dialogue that I think will champion the way for the development of our clinical innovation hub in Hong Kong. So with that, thanks again for the panelists, and give it back to Nick.
Thank you so much. Another big round of applause, please, to this panel for the fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Would our guests on stage please stand together for a photo to commemorate this moment, and thank you so much for providing your insights. Well, we heard a lot from the panel and we learned a lot as well. From talents to policies, strategies, a lot of things for our industry and also the government to consider to help us develop Hong Kong into Asia's leading clinical innovation hub. That's very important. All right, thank you once again. Thank you very much to all our panelists. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Also, we would like to thank you all for joining us today and your active participation. We hope that the connection, discussion, and all the dialogue can continue after this event. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude the event, we hope that we will all continue the dialogue and collaboration beyond this gathering. Together, let us work towards positioning Hong Kong as Asia's premier clinical innovation hub, driving positive change and fostering the development of cutting-edge technologies in the healthcare sector. Do stay with us for the networking sessions and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.